Imagine you are standing on the dusty plains of what will eventually become South Africa 255 million years ago. The air is thick, dry, and smells faintly of ferns and volcanic ash. The sun is setting on the Permian period, and the world is already stressed. You feel the ground vibrate, not from an earthquake, but from an absolute unit of a predator stalking its prey. This beast predates the first true dinosaurs by tens of millions of years. It's an evolutionary prototype, a walking argument for why nature loves massive teeth. Now, snap your fingers. We jump 180 million years forward. The world is lush, humid, defined by giants. But we're not looking at T-Rex. We're looking at a creature so perfectly engineered for silent, lethal violence that Hollywood barely did it justice. It's feathered, it's fast, and it's arguably the smartest hunter of its time. A Gorgonopsid versus a Velociraptor. This isn't just a mismatch, it's a temporal paradox, a collision between deep time and the Cretaceous peak. It's a fight between sheer power and tactical genius. And if you think you know who wins, prepare to have your timeline and your expectations shredded. Welcome back to the Lost World. Today, we are pitting the ultimate pre-dinosaur nightmare fuel against the feathered assassin that gives dino normies recurring anxiety. The first thing we need to address is the sheer scope of the temporal chasm between these two creatures. When the Gorgonopsid was roaming Pangaea, the continents were welded together, and life was recovering from previous mass extinction events, gearing up for the biggest one, the Permian Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, which wiped out 96% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species. The Gorgonopsids, members of the Synapsids, the lineage that includes us, were the apex predators of this fragile world. They were, evolutionarily speaking, our ancestors' worst nightmare. They weren't reptiles, they weren't mammals yet, they were something bizarre in between. The specimen we are focusing on for this hypothetical bout isn't the smaller types, the short kings of the Gorgonopsid family. We are talking about the final boss, Inostrancevia. Inostrancevia alexandri was first discovered in Russia and represented the pinnacle of their design. Picture this. 7 feet long, maybe the size of a modern brown bear, weighing potentially half a ton, roughly equivalent to a small Honda Civic cut in half lengthwise. This was a ground-hugging terror, built like a brick outhouse, defined by a massive, deep skull and, crucially, those teeth. The upper canines of Inostrancevia were pure, unadulterated nightmare fuel. They could reach 5 inches in length, often serrated, and were designed not just to puncture, but to deliver massive, incapacitating trauma. These saber-like fangs didn't just pierce the hide. They were designed to slice through major arteries and soft tissue in one swift, brutal motion. Researchers from the University of the Witwatersrand, in a 2019 analysis, noted that the jaw mechanics, while less complex than later mammalian jaws, were optimized for a powerful, rapid bite and release strategy. Think less like a relentless crocodile and more like a surgical, albeit messy, operation. The environment of the late Permian shaped this predator. Prey animals like the scaly Periiosaurs or the hefty Dicynodonts, like Lystroceros, were robust, slow-moving, and often armored. The Gorgonopsid needed brute force to breach that defense. It didn't rely on speed, it relied on momentum and a killer first strike. Its gait was semi-sprawling, a powerful side-to-side rotation that gave it leverage but limited its sustained running speed. In a flat-out race over a few hundred yards, the Gorgonopsid would quickly tire. Its metabolism, while likely higher than pure reptiles, was nowhere near the hyper-efficient endothermic levels of a bird or mammal today. It relied on ambush, short sprints, and overwhelming mass. This creature's main tactical advantage is simple: physics. If it gets within striking distance, the sheer kinetic energy delivered by a half-ton body slamming into anything smaller than a refrigerator is terminal. The raptor, our challenger, would instantly be roadkill. But we have to remember the Gorgonopsid's biggest flaw: the brain. Now let's fast forward 180 million years and shift continents to the Cretaceous Gobi Desert. The Gorgonopsid lineage? RIP. Wiped out in the Great Dying. Dinosaurs inherited the Earth. Our challenger is the Velociraptor mongoliensis. Forget the 7-foot-tall, scaly monsters from the movies. The real Velociraptor was a short king, standing maybe 3 feet tall at the hip, measuring about 6.8 feet long, and weighing about 30 to 45 pounds. That's the weight of a powerful house cat or a medium-sized dog. The Velociraptor is, admittedly, not an absolute unit in terms of mass, but it is an absolute unit of biological perfection. Where the Gorgonopsid was a brute force weapon forged in a nascent world, the Velociraptor was a precision instrument honed by 150 million years of dinosaurian competitive pressure. Its key features are speed, sensory acuity, and one terrifying weapon, the sickle claw. This retractable, curved claw on the second toe could reach 3.5 inches in length. For decades, dino normies and even some scientists believed this was a slashing weapon used to disembowel prey. However, a deep dive into biomechanics, particularly research led by paleontologists like Phil Manning and colleagues from the University of Manchester, suggests a different, more terrifying function: pinning. The Velociraptor likely used its speed and feathered arms, which might have aided balance and signaling, much like modern birds, to leap onto the back of smaller prey, driving the massive sickle claw deep to hold the struggling animal down while delivering targeted bites to the neck or throat. It's an evolutionary switchblade designed for specialized grappling. But the real advantage of the Velociraptor isn't the claw, it's the operating system. Velociraptors were likely endothermic, capable of sustained high-speed movement, a biological Ferrari compared to the Gorgonopsid's muddy tractor. Their brain-to-body ratio was exponentially higher. This is the crucial detail: intelligence. A 2023 study focusing on dromaeosaurid endocasts, internal molds of the skull, suggested complex sensory processing and a possible level of coordination previously unseen in earlier Triassic and Permian predators. Velociraptors almost certainly hunted in coordinated packs. We have evidence of this, most famously the fighting dinosaurs fossil found in Mongolia, where a velociraptor is locked in battle with a protoceratops. A single velociraptor is a problem. A pack is a force multiplier. The Gorgonopsid is facing not just a faster target, but a multi-pronged, problem-solving attack unit. If the raptors understand that the target is too big to kill quickly, they will switch from frontal assault to harassment, targeting the legs and flanks, waiting for the massive, slow-turning body of the synapsid to commit a single fatal mistake. Before we throw these two titans of different eras into the ring, let's take a quick moment. This channel, The Lost World, is dedicated to digging up the bizarre, the massive, and the scientifically perplexing. But finding these fossils takes serious endurance. And that's why we rely on gear that can handle the extreme elements, from the searing heat of the Karoo Basin where Gorgonopsid fossils bake under the sun, to the freezing Gobi nights where you might find a raptor nest. We need energy and focus. That's where our fictional sponsor, TerraFuel Energy Bars, comes in. Paleontology requires 7 hours of meticulous scraping, followed by 3 hours of heavy lifting. TerraFuel, packed with Permian-era minerals, don't worry, they're synthetic, gives you the sustained energy without the crash. Whether you're running from a charging Triceratops or just trying to finish that 3,000-word script due tomorrow, TerraFuel powers the hunt. Check out terrafuel.com/lostworld for 15% off your first 12-pack of saber-tooth berry flavor. Now, back to our time-traveling cage match. We've established the fundamentals. Gorgonopsid, mass, power, devastating first strike, low stamina, low tactical intelligence. Velociraptor, speed, dexterity, coordination, high stamina, high intelligence. The critical variable in any fight between creatures separated by deep time is always the environment. Where does this fight take place? Scenario 1. The Permian floodplain, wet, muddy, confined. If the collision happens in a confined space, say a narrow canyon or the dense, damp forest edge of the Permian, the odds swing heavily toward the Gorgonopsid. The Gorgonopsid's low, muscular frame and sprawling gait are built for delivering massive torque in close quarters. Muddy or uneven ground, typical of the Permian floodplains, would slow the raptor down significantly. Those delicate ankles and specialized running legs, evolved for firm ground, would struggle for purchase. The Gorgonopsid just needs one moment. It would leverage its mass, driving its head low, absorbing any potential scratches or pinning attempts from the short king raptors on its heavily muscled neck and shoulders. One clumsy dodge by the raptor, one slip in the mud, and the Gorgonopsid closes the distance. If Inostrancevia connects, the fight is over. The Gorgonopsid's saber teeth are not subtle. They are designed to cause immediate systemic collapse. Imagine the impact of a half-ton bear accelerating into a 40-pound dog, except the dog is armed with knives, and the bear is armed with razor-sharp surgical implements the length of your hand. The raptor becomes a messy pile of roadkill instantly. The Gorgonopsid wins 9 times in 10 in tight, uneven terrain, purely because its margin for error is astronomical compared to the raptors. This is where the audience usually flips back to the Gorgonopsid. Oh, okay, size wins. But wait, this is where we introduce the detail few consider. The Velociraptor did not evolve to fight absolute units like the Gorgonopsid, but it did evolve to fight ceratopsians and hadrosaurs far larger than itself. It evolved to handle threats in a dynamic environment. The late Cretaceous was a constant arms race. Its brain is its true weapon. Scenario 2, the Cretaceous desert dunes. Open, firm sandy rock, arid. Now we put the fight on the raptor's home turf, the wide, open plains of the Gobi. The firm, undulating ground allows the raptors to utilize their phenomenal speed, estimated up to 40 miles per hour in short bursts, and superior stamina. The raptors, likely in a coordinated pack of 3 or 4, would immediately recognize the Gorgonopsid as a bizarre, overly aggressive threat with an obvious Achilles heel: stamina. They wouldn't charge, they would harass. This is where we must discuss the fatal physiological flaw of the Gorgonopsid lineage. Despite their synapsid status, their respiration systems were not designed for sustained exertion like a bird-hooked dinosaur or a modern mammalian carnivora. The sprawling gait required massive amounts of energy, and its diaphragm system, or lack thereof compared to later forms, limited its ability to efficiently oxygenate its blood during a full sprint. The raptors don't need to engage, they just need to keep the absolute unit moving. Imagine 3 raptors, let's call them Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, circling. Alpha feints a charge, drawing the Gorgonopsid into a short, explosive sprint. The Gorgonopsid snarls, its huge mouth gaping, its terrifying canines catching light. It lunges. It misses. The raptors are already 50 feet away, laughing in feathered chirps. Beta comes from the flank, delivering a quick, glancing blow with the sickle claw to the back leg. Not a killing strike, just a painful, shallow cut. The Gorgonopsid wheels around, slower this time, breathing heavily. After 5 minutes of this high-speed, taunting dance, the Gorgonopsid begins to falter. Its powerful muscles, fueled by a less efficient circulatory system, are rapidly building up lactic acid. It's becoming visibly tired, its movements becoming slower and more predictable. This is the moment of truth. Once the Gorgonopsid is exhausted, the raptors switch tactics. They go for the tendons and the soft underbelly. Their high intelligence allows them to communicate the strategic shift. Instead of individual lunges, they attack in waves, 2 distracting the massive skull, while the third leaps onto the exhausted flank, trying to open a major wound. If the raptors manage to sever the Achilles tendon equivalents in the Gorgonopsid's legs, the great predator collapses. It is now a half-ton of vulnerable, heavy meat. The Gorgonopsid is too heavy to defend itself effectively when grounded. Its massive head and sabers are useless if it cannot lift its body to deliver the striking force.
The raptors, utilizing their specialized pinning claws and deep slicing bites, would converge, targeting the throat and the soft tissue behind the ribcage. The fight ends in a precise, strategic, and messy feeding frenzy. The Gorgonopsid, the terror of the Permian, dies not because of a lack of power, but because of a 200 million year technological gap in its respiratory system and cognitive function. We promised a clear verdict, but the reality is messy, much like the history of life itself. The outcome hinges entirely on a single factor: the time elapsed from first contact. If the fight is a sudden, accidental collision in tight quarters, the Gorgonopsid wins. Its size and those devastating saber teeth provide an instantaneous, guaranteed kill. It only needs to get lucky once. The raptor, for all its intelligence, cannot survive a direct hit.
However, if the raptors are able to assess the threat, coordinate an attack, and utilize their stamina and speed, the outcome flips entirely. The Gorgonopsid is simply too slow to deal with multiple, sustained, high-speed threats. In a scientific sense, judging evolutionary fitness requires viewing the animal within its own era. But in this fictional paradox, we must judge the predatory efficiency. The Gorgonopsid represents the peak of raw, pre-mammalian power, a design that needed to be powerful because it was slow. It was built for resilience in a tough, primitive world. The Velociraptor represents the peak of Mesozoic specialization, a feathered anxiety machine built for lethal speed and calculated violence. It was built for efficiency in an incredibly competitive environment. Our final verdict acknowledges the asymmetry. Gorgonopsid wins the straight-up brawl, power versus speed. Velociraptor wins the long game, stamina and intelligence versus brute force. But if we have to pick the most likely winner in a non-accidental, measured encounter, we must give the edge to the cognitive fighter. Survival isn't about the biggest muscles, it's about the most efficient nervous system. The Gorgonopsid's physiology, built in an era when most everything was slow, would be its downfall against the hyperactive, highly motivated short kills of the Cretaceous. The Gorgonopsid runs out of gas, the raptors run out the clock. The Gorgonopsid, the ultimate late Permian absolute unit, gets strategically dismantled by a pack of smart, feathered, high-metabolism ninjas. It's a tragic end for the ultimate pre-dinosaur predator. But that, my friends, is evolution. It always favors the faster, smarter machine. Thanks for watching, and until next time on The Lost World.